The point of Confessions of a Terrible Husband was that you can do all of the big things right. You can be faithful, you can be gentle, you can be kind, but if you do enough of the little things wrong, your relationship's going to suffer. You're just terrible at being a spouse.
You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. Profit designers, are you ready to take your life back from your business? If so, I invite you to join us in the Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back Facebook community that we've started at Tap the Potential. Chances are, if you have a growing business, you're paying a team, and you still feel like you're having to do it all. It shouldn't be this way. Work should support life, not the other way around. And at Tap the Potential, we support entrepreneurs like you in designing sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. In our Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back Facebook group, I'm sharing with you lots of tips, tools, and strategies to support you in a business that gives you your life back. When you join our community, you will get access to exclusive mini trainings from me, including the Better Business, Better Life Jumpstart, as well as the How to Hire the Best Jumpstart. These free trainings are available only to the members of the Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back Facebook community. There's no charge to join. I would love to see you there and get to know more about you. To join us, go to tapthepotential.com/group. That's tapthepotential.com/group. Profit designers, today I'm bringing you a conversation with Nick Pavlidis. Nick and I sat down a couple of weeks ago and had this conversation, and I came away from this conversation so inspired, full of aha moments. There's so many learning points here. And as we dive into this, I think one of the big ones that really stands out to me is, we talk a lot about hiring A players and being A players ourselves as entrepreneurs. And there's a dark side to being an A player. And it's something that it's the Achilles heel of being an A player. And it's one of those things that we need to be aware of as we work on designing our businesses that give us our lives back. I believe you will be inspired and you will have some pretty big aha moments, if not total mindset shifts from this conversation. Nick is a lawyer-turned-ghostwriter, podcaster, and course creator. Nick helps thought leaders write books that build more momentum during the writing process than most books build over their lifetime. He also helps writers turn their talent and passion for writing into a profitable ghostwriting business. Profit designers, at Tap the Potential, we are on a mission right now to be a positive force in social media during trying times for all of us entrepreneurs. In that regard, I would love it if you could help us out. We really want to get behind any of you who are doing good things in your communities, showing up and leading with love. If you are doing something to keep your team together during this time and you're sharing it in social media, or you come across another entrepreneur who is being a gift from their gift in some way that you notice, please use the hashtags Lead with Love and Be a Gift. Our team at Tap the Potential is on the lookout in social media for those hashtags, and we will be reposting those social media posts from the Tap the Potential social media. Let's all lead with love, be a gift, and shine bright during these trying times. Well, Nick, I am excited to have you here with us on the Profit by Design podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Sabrina. I'm honored.
Yes. And so one of the things that I just want to say right up front is many of you know Nick, but you have never met him or heard his name before. And the reason you are probably familiar with him is Nick has been the ghostwriter on 3 of my books so far. So How to Hire the Best Contractors Edition. Nick and I worked very closely. You had a lot of work that you put into that Contractors Edition, and that one became an Amazon International bestseller. That was awesome. And you were a big promoter during the launch. You helped us get that out there. And then the How to Hire the Best, the Entrepreneur's Ultimate Guide to Attracting Top Performing Team Members. One of the things that happened with that book that was really cool is you made a transition in your business. So you went from the one doing the ghostwriting to bringing in a team, and Sarah came on board, Sarah Tough Dunn, who is helping. She helped with that book and a very big way. And she and I are knee deep right now in editing passes on the 4-week vacation that's coming out in October of 2021. So, and the other thing that I think you all should know about Nick is that he has not been a ghostwriter all of his life. He has a previous career as an attorney. And currently he has 2 endeavors that he's up to. He has a program where he helps thought leaders write books that build more momentum during the writing process than most books build over their lifetime. And just as we were starting to hit the record button, Nick told me he has a course coming out called Booked, and we'll tell you more about that in a little bit, but it's basically everything that he teaches us about how to build momentum with our books. And he's also helping writers turn their talent and passion for writing into a profitable ghostwriting business. So you have quite a life's journey here, Nick. So I just want to invite you as we start off to talk about what your early days in your career were like. And as a lawyer, you were grinding it out, and you have a book that you wrote around that time called The Confessions of a Terrible Husband. And if that title doesn't speak volumes to the impact of grinding it out on a family and a marriage, nothing else does. So take us back to that time in your life and what was going on.
Yeah, and the point of Confessions of a Terrible Husband was that you can do all of the big things right. You can be faithful, you can be gentle, you can be kind, but if you do enough of the little things wrong, your relationship's going to suffer. You're just terrible at being a spouse. And that's what the thesis, and that was my reality. I was a lawyer in New York City. I graduated from one of the best law schools in the country, and I don't say that to, say that I'm super smart or anything like that, but I had invested a lot, and there was a lot of outside pressure on that legal career. My father came over, literally walked off the boat in the 1960s as a merchant marine and applied for citizenship from Greece. He met my mother. They got married as his application was being processed because things took time back then, and he was concerned about being deported. And then they got married in a real way. So the fact that their son made it through undergrad and into a top law school and working at a top tier firm in the heart of New York City was a matter of pride for them. They were very, very happy. They were super supportive, but it wasn't an easy decision to start questioning the practice of law. But frankly, I had 2 kids in 2012 or so. I had 2 kids. I had 1 wife, and there were days where, I was working 80 plus hours a week easily. And the worst part of it was that they weren't the same hours. If I worked 15 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and then everyone left me alone around that, at least we would have some expectations. And that's one thing I talk about when people chat with me. I still get people who reach out over the book. If you tell your spouse you're going to be home at 6 and you're home at 8, it's a problem. If you tell your spouse you're going to be home at 8 and you're home at 8, then they expect it. So really a lot of communication and a lot of problems come from expectations. And I just couldn't I didn't feel like I could set those expectations. So it was always, when are you going to come home? I don't know. Can we make dinner appointment? I don't know. And it just wore on me. And it got to the point where I either needed to quit my job or quit my marriage. And there were days when I thought I was going to come home and my wife and kids weren't going to be there. It was really, really hard. It's still hard to think back. And frankly, our entire families, my family and her family, are all from Massachusetts, where we currently live. It's a spoiler alert. But my wife had nobody. I mean, no, she had some friends, but she had no depth. Like, she had good friends, but even then, it's not the same as family. And she was she was homesick. Her heart was aching, and she wanted to move back to Massachusetts. So after years of hitting my head against the wall, I finally, in 2012-ish or so, I started exploring what it might look like to build something on the side. I was always entrepreneurial. I was doing really well in the practice of law. I was a corporate litigator, never lost a case. Again, I don't say that to be bragging or anything like that, but I just loved the intellectual exercise of it. I loved piecing together story and fact and provable facts and strategies and everything. I just really liked putting that puzzle together. And other lawyers would go into court and say, Your Honor, this is what the law says, and this is what the documents say, so that we should win. And I would stand up and I would say, Your Honor, I'm going to talk to you about the law and I'm going to talk to you about the facts, but let me talk to you a little bit about what happened here first. And I'd tell the story. And especially when I went first in that explanation, everything my opponent would say would be filtered through the story because they wouldn't tell the story. So the judge would just hear the story of what happened. And I did really, really well. It was a unique way to practice law. A lot of people say, oh, I lead with story too, but no one ever does. But that's just how I just didn't care enough about the law to do it another way. So I did super well, had a corner office overlooking Central Park, all that stuff. And finally I said, what am I doing? Nobody cares about the corner office. I looked around, and not just my coworkers, but people at other law firms. I looked around the legal industry. Their conversations were about their second wife or their third husband. And I didn't it just kept hitting me. And if you want to know where you'll end up, take a look at the people who walked the path you're walking before you. And that just really hit me that it's just a matter of time before we get divorced if I stay at the law firm. So I tried for a while to get my wife to change, so to speak, because in my mind it was like, well, if she just understood that this would happen or that would happen, if she would just let me do this, then everything would be okay. That didn't work, much to my surprise. But I decided, you know what, I am going to try and improve. I'm going to try and figure something out. So I got in a huge argument with her because she had been begging me to take a vacation for a while. And I was just like, no. But I decided to take 4 days off by myself to fly down to Nashville, Tennessee to go to a business coaching seminar to see whether that might be something that I could transition out of the law into. So she went with her family to Hershey Park, and I went down to Nashville, Tennessee for a few days. And that's where Confessions of a Terrible Husband was born, because this was before I even thought about that stuff. I'm just like, I just got to figure out what to do next because I need to escape the practice of law. It's going to kill me and destroy my family. So I go down there, I drive, I go into this place. It's this converted barn called The Sanctuary. And there's an event led by a guy named Dan Miller, who wrote a book called 48 Days to the Work You Love. And he's a career coach or whatever. So I sit down, he walks to the front of the room, and then some lady walks to the front of the room. And I didn't know the lady. And they're both talking. And then eventually I learn that the lady was his wife, and he includes her in everything he does. And I was just like, it wasn't conceptually a problem. It was just, I had never even considered, like for me, it's like, here's business, here's home. And just watching the way they loved each other and they finished each other's sentences in a positive way. They sort of jabbed at each other, cute way. Like it was just, they were dancing in front of the room. It was just incredible. So I go down there to learn how to be a coach, and I realized all I got to do is be a better husband, and everything else will at least get better. It will improve. We'll figure out the next step.
Okay, mic drop right there, because that was the immediate mindset shift. You have to shift the priorities. Instead of being the better lawyer, I can be the better husband, and everything will fall into place. I mean, that is the epitome of work supports life, not the other way.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I had been working at the law firm at that point for like 9 years or so. And it was always chasing, all right, once I'm in charge, once I'm the boss, once I'm this, I'll be able to work less or whatever. But then once I made that shift, I go back to the law firm, and this is like June 1st of 2013 at this point. I go back to the law firm and I look around, and all the people who were the bosses were working just as hard as I was. They weren't doing anything. I started seeing things in a different light. I said, the path I'm on, not just the whole marriage side of things, but the work side, nothing's going to change. I just need to make a big change. Right.
There is no, like, we're always going to, when we get there, it's going to be better. And you were smart enough to look around. A lot of us don't do that. We don't look at the people ahead of us and say, what is their life really like?
Yeah.
You did that.
Yeah. So I was up for partner that year, and I knew it was going to be hard because at the time the legal industry was shifting. I was the only person who wasn't a partner to have a corner office or whatever. So I say that again because my chances were okay. And I had a scheduled meeting June 7th. So like 6 days later, it's all right, let's go talk about being partner. I still haven't said anything to my wife about all of my doubts with the practice of law. I mean, frankly, because if I had mentioned me considering moving back to Massachusetts, she would already have hired a real estate agent and there would be no stopping it. So I still was just like, this is all internal, all inside me at this point. So we sit down in the meeting and they're like, everyone loves you. You've been here a while. I was the head of the associates committee firm-wide. I'd fly around to all the offices and stuff like that. Really great firm citizen. Here's what needs to happen for you to make partner. And it was more. And I was bringing in business. That's the world there. It was a 400 person law firm, 400 lawyer law firm. And I was bringing in business. I was firm leadership, all that stuff. But it was always more and more and more and more and more. So I sit down about 15 minutes into the interview and I said, you know what? What if I do none of that? And the two partners who I was really close with said, well, what do you mean if you do none of that? I said, well, I just don't think I can do more. If you want to make me partner, and you're going to keep getting what you're going to keep getting. I was the only associate, maybe there were a handful out of well over maybe 200 associates who never missed their hours, never lost a case. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one who never lost and never missed the hours. And I'm talking through the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. Other people had nothing to do, and I was getting productivity bonuses. So I was always productive, always doing. I just don't have it in me. This is all I got. If that's good enough for partner, great. If not, just tell me what happens if I don't do it. And they said, well, eventually you'll get laid off. And I said, well, how eventually? And they said, well, this is June 7th. They said, well, sometime in the fall, you'll get a severance letter. And I said, well, how long is that severance? And they said, it's 3 months, standard. And I said, okay, so basically you're telling me I'm getting paid till the end of the year if I do nothing. What if I do something? What if I just help transition stuff over and I just need to move my family back to Massachusetts? Like, I got nothing left. My marriage is going to fall apart if I stick around. And I think I'm just done. That was the first time anyone was just like, no, thanks. I'm good with the partner thing, whatever. So they didn't really know how to react. And they said, well, I don't know. This isn't really a negotiation. I said, yet here we are negotiating. So I said, listen, I'm moving back to Massachusetts. I need some time. I need to find a job out there. I need a whole bunch of stuff. And listen, I'll transition everything. You know how hard I work. What if you paid me through next March? And they were just like almost laughed at me. But eventually we actually did agree and they paid me through the following February. And that was important.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was great because I was able to call up the one client I had introduced to the law firm who had an office in Massachusetts and said, I just quit my job. And she laughed at me. She's like, no, you didn't. I said, no, I did. And it took me a while to convince her. She's like, no way, you're Mr. Law Firm. And I'm like, no, I understand that. But I'm also Mr. Husband and we'll figure it out. I know how much money you spend on lawyers. If you want to save a whole bunch of money, hire me and I'll come work for you. And she's like, I have no money to pay you. It was June. It was like June 8th at that point or something. I was like, it was June. And I said, well, good news. I negotiated with them. So you don't have to pay me till next year. So you don't have to fit me into any budget until next year's budget, which you haven't set yet. And she's like, all right. I knew how they worked. And I said, and I want you to listen super, super carefully because I mean this to the heart. You know how much I'm a hustler. I'm a business guy. I don't care how much you pay me. I care about 4 things and none of them are pay. And she's like, yeah, okay, you don't care about pay. I said, try me, lowball me. Here are the 4 things I care about. Number 1, I want a set schedule. I don't care what the schedule is. I just want it to be set. I want to know when I'm working. Number 2, it kind of takes a little bit away from number 1, but number 2, I don't want to work weekends unless there's an emergency, and a real emergency. Number 3, I don't want email on my phone. When I'm home, I don't want every buzz or ding to tell me just make me think I have to work or whatever. And then number 4, I want to own my online reputation because I'm going to figure something out. I'll be with your company for at least 2 years, but I want to do something entrepreneurial on the side or whatever. And I don't want it to look poorly on the company that I have, LinkedIn profiles with your company name and a whole bunch of weird things that I'm probably going to figure out to do.
You took your life back.
It was hard.
Statements where I don't care how much I make and I want my life back. That's what I hear in that.
Yeah.
So it's a cliffhanger. What did she say?
Well, she's like, I got to figure this out. But she's like, if you really don't care how much you get paid, I might be able to figure something out. I said, try me. So, frankly, at the time, I was making over $250,000 a year as an employee at the law firm, plus bonuses and other stuff. I took more than $125,000 a year pay cut to go work for that company. So she's like, this is all we can fit into the budget that I can convince the board, because the way the company works is they're a corporate acquisition company, a holding company, and they buy a whole bunch of other entities. And they need the corporate structure to be very lean, because they invest in all the other things. So it's easier for them to spend more money externally than internally, than to spend less internally, just because of their relationships with their investors and stuff like that. So they all look at overhead, or whatever. So all that to say, they made me an offer. They actually added to it. They said, and the chairman isn't using his corporate car anymore, so you can drive his car if you want. So I got to drive a really cool Audi Q5 at the time, which was brand like 2 years old or 1 year old or something at the time. So they paid me. I was there for 2.5 years while I worked nights and weekends to figure out what to do next. And how I set that time was really, it was a challenge, because naturally we moved the family home. So June 7th, I gave my notice. August 28th, we closed on our house in Massachusetts.
Wow. So much transition there.
Well, I had to do it before I started really thinking things through at that point. Like, I knew it was the right thing to do and I knew that's it, but like, it was hard. So I needed to just like a Band-Aid right off. And even making those quote unquote demands on the new company, like, I'm sure they could have paid me $50,000, $60,000 a year more, which would have been huge. But like I said, listen, you know how hard I work for you. If there's an emergency, you'll have my cell phone number. So just call me and I'll answer. Weekends, nights, I'll answer, but call me. I just wanted to put that boundary in to have them have to actually dial a number if they want to do it. I said, but if it can wait till the following morning or Monday, shoot me an email and I will get it done the second I get back into the office.
So I want to comment on that, because we teach people how to treat us. And you were trying so hard to take your life back. And for you, it took tremendous courage to even put those boundaries in place. But it was that beginning of setting the relationship. Here's how we are going to engage going forward. This is what's important to me. And, as you were sharing your story, you said early on, I didn't feel like I could set expectations. And so this is your first attempt at set some expectations here. And then the other thing that you shared is you said, I was trying to get my wife to change. And you realized you couldn't change her. The change had to come from you. And what really, the piece that just tugged at my heartstrings was when you said your wife was begging you to take a vacation. And the courage that it took for you not to take that first vacation with her and say, no, I'm taking 4 days off, because that was big for you to take 4 days off. And you went and you explored an opportunity. You did it in service of looking for something different. But the impact that it had on all the relationships with your wife and your children. How old were your kids at this time?
They were 1.5 years or 2 and 4. So June 6th of 2013, my son turned 4 years old. So 4 years and give or take a day. So he was turning 4 when we had this argument. And my daughter's 20 months younger than him. So 2-ish. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm pointing this out because I want all of the entrepreneurs who are listening to this who feel like your business runs your life, like you're on a treadmill and you can't set expectations. You can't say, I'm going to be home at 8 o'clock and stick to it, because you never know what's going to happen. Or if you don't know if you can go out of town to the beach with your family because you don't know if you're going to need to do something with the business. It is a matter of taking those initial steps of reclaiming, these are the expectations that I'm going to set. And with all the people around you, you fortunately had one person to negotiate this with who was paying you. But with all the people around you, resetting those expectations of here's how we're going to engage going forward. I want to be able to not check email in the evenings. Like that is, I'm writing about this right now in the 4-week vacation. That is the biggest thing is those little boundaries. But those little boundaries that you start putting in place lead to a whole different life. And, you know, as we started the interview, I shared what you're up to now. So everyone knows where you are now. You didn't stay in this place. So as you started making this transition, what did you learn about yourself that you didn't know prior to this?
That I'm going to expand to the size of the cage. And just like they say, you know, a snake will only get as big as the cage that you keep it in. That's the way I am with my work. So if I didn't set those boundaries, I would just keep expanding. Once I did set those boundaries, I expanded. I worked my tail off to the side. I got just as much done and I got great reviews. In fact, spoiler alert, at the end, when I quit that job, they let me keep the Audi.
Wow.
Yeah, they were like, I'm the only person who like literally quit 2 jobs and got severance each time. So like you don't typically you quit and they say, well, good luck to you or whatever. So first job, they paid me through the following February. And then the next job, they gave me 3 months severance to help me as I opened my business, paid for 100% of my family's health insurance, including 100% of the monthly premium, and let me keep Audi Q5. They just said, thanks, you know, you've worked your tail off, and we got no use for it. And the corporate lease is almost paid off. Just take it. I paid $154 or something to transfer the title over. So I got just as much done with those boundaries. And my boss was just as happy because I set and delivered on those expectations. So this became really relevant when I finally found whatever it was that I was going to do for the entrepreneurial side of things, which started out as ghostwriting. And I still ghostwrite. I still work very closely with Sarah. We meet all the time and do work. I build the relationships. I'm all doing all the strategy, but I'm doing the stuff that I excel best at with our clients. And yes, and the writing, like when I tell people about the value they get when they hire me or my company to help them with a book, the words are like the 10th most important side of it. Like whether you write a sentence one way or another, the reader, first of all, doesn't know how else it could have been written or would have been written. They don't really care. If it gets the point across and it makes an emotional connection and you put all the right pieces in the place, the words don't really matter. As long as they read well, they'll be fine. It's the thought that goes into the words and the process that goes into the words. That's the highest value. And that's what I'm still intimately involved in all the projects, even the ones that my writers are leading. So when I first started working at that company, I spent those nights and weekends hanging out with my family, doing stuff, but the kids would go to bed at like 8 o'clock. And then my wife and I would hang out together and it was great. My mind's always focused on business side of things. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I want to be a business coach. I started poking around with that. It didn't feel like a great fit right away. I said, okay, maybe I want to, and I just started looking around. Maybe I want to be a blogger. And I started blogging and it was okay. I liked the writing side of things, but I just didn't, there was no one else involved. It was me and a computer screen. So I didn't love that. Eventually I found ghostwriting. And once I found ghostwriting, I knew that I needed to be consistent with it. I heard it somewhere. It's definitely not original, but the best productivity hack is consistency. And that's a word I live by.
Yes.
That's it. So what you do consistently will be what you yield. If you're consistently lazy, you won't get great results. If you're consistently productive, whether it's 10 hours a week or 40 hours a week, you'll consistently make progress. If you're inconsistent, you'll be inconsistent in your results at best. So I knew I needed some consistency. So I sat down with my wife, and this was the next argument we had. And this is an argument that I went in to lose from the start, because I knew that the key to me succeeding in ghostwriting was really whether my wife supported it. So I wanted to just say, okay, I get home at 7 o'clock, boom, 7 o'clock till midnight. I'll eat behind the screen. I'll play with the kids a little bit, whatever. But like I went back into workaholic mode and said, okay, for like 2 years, if I could do it and I could still be involved in the family. I'll still be in the same room as them. It's not like practicing law. Like I immediately, like I had that shift in mindset, but it was like I started making excuses for myself. But I said, I started visualizing what it would look like for me to still be there with my family, have the weekends with them, have some time at night or whatever, but really be sort of work playing from home with ghostwriting. So that was my, okay, if I could do this 20 hours a week, I could do it faster. I can quit the practice of law and then life will be great for us. But I knew that was a bad idea. The more I thought about it, I was like, that's not really work. I'm going to grow to the size of the cage. I need a smaller cage. I'm never like, I know that I will just stop playing with the kids and whatever, even though that's what I want to do. I just know my tendency. So I sat down with my wife and said, I think I figured out what I want to do next that can replace the practice of law, where we can make money from anywhere. We can, I don't have to be at an office at any particular time, even though I ended up buying a condo and now 3 miles away from my house. So I do have that separation and I have team members in here. But I think I found the perfect fit. You can make great money doing it. You can make a great impact doing it. You can do it from anywhere. It's ghostwriting. And she's like, ghostwriting? And I'm like, yeah, I don't really know about it either, but I'll figure it out. And I love writing. I had written a book. I had started writing Confessions of a Terrible Husband as sort of a journal of me exploring all the little things I was doing poorly in my relationship and just making sure I kept those top of mind so I wouldn't keep doing them. I said, so, when I work during the day, when do you think would be a time where I could work on my ghostwriting business uninterrupted? I can make appointments with clients that I don't have to worry about breaking, that won't impact you or the family negatively. And she's like, I don't know, why don't you just do it when the kids go to bed? And the kids went to bed at 8. So I said, well, what about this? And I negotiated against myself, I guess, if you're, depending on how you look at it. I said, what about 8:30 until whenever? Every night from 8:30 until midnight, I can make appointments with clients that I don't have to worry about canceling. And if the kids are up, because sometimes it takes a little while for them to get down. If the kids are still up, at least then you'll know, all right, if they're still up, rarely at 8:30, I have to do more work. But otherwise, Nick's going to be with me, giving the kids the bath, totally focused on the home stuff. And then he'll go upstairs to the attic and work on the ghostwriting business. She said, great. So I went into that argument trying to make sure that it wasn't me convincing her, what about 7:30? Because then at 7:45, it would be, I wish you had just done 8 o'clock. So I went in there to make it so she set the rules. And that was the cage. I wanted her to set the cage. And I went upstairs every night with the mindset that I'm going to build the best ghostwriting business I can from 8:30 till midnight. And it was like magic. It took me a few months to figure it out. There was no great course out there. There was nobody in the ghostwriting business was sharing how to become a ghostwriter. They were all just trying to find their own clients and stuff like that. So I did have a mentor. I asked a few questions. They're like, oh, I got this from this agency. They send me some leads or whatever. And that didn't seem attractive to me. I didn't want to be on some listserv or whatever. So I had always been a relationship person. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to try it a different way. And I promised myself, if I cracked this code, if I figured it out, I would provide that training to other ghostwriters to be able to come in. And that's where Ghostwriter School comes from. But within 2 or 3 months, I got my first client. Within 8 months after that, I was able to quit the practice of law for good. Get handed in my notice and haven't looked back.
Wow. So you were determined. And I think that is the key. You were burning the ships. You were going to make this work. And the other piece that really stands out to me, as you talked about work playing, is how you talked about just you were falling back into old habits, even as you had, you were trying to make that shift. And I think that happens to all of us because, to that point, you had years and years and years of training to grind it out. And that to be an A player means work harder, work harder, work harder. And the bar kept moving. And even when you got yourself out of that environment, you fell back into old ways. And I think that really speaks to the importance. And you were looking for this. You were looking for mentors. You were looking to surround yourself with people who could show you a different path. And you weren't finding them, which is hard. But I think one of the things that I've always appreciated about you is the network that you have built around yourself and how you show up in your network. You are a giver. I mean, you are the epitome of be a gift. You and I met for the first time, I think it was 2018 at Podcast Movement in Philly. And I ran into you multiple times there. We had lots of conversations. We went out to eat with several of your colleagues at the Brazilian steakhouse. It was really good. And just every interaction, you were showing up. Can I help? I have an idea for you. All right. Have you thought of this? And I think that's one of the things as entrepreneurs, we need to remember there are people behind us that need, to learn from us. They need to look forward and see an example of how to be and how to have a successful business without it taking over your life. And so I want to go there next with you. So you have multiple endeavors. I mean, you're prolific. You're doing all kinds of things. You also have a podcast, 5 Minutes with Dad, with your children, which my daughter loves that podcast. You have another podcast too, right? That's not your only podcast.
Yeah, I did a podcast for Confessions for a while, and I updated a couple of episodes every once in a while in 2020, and I'll likely do a few here and there. The Confessions podcast, it just took off. It was crazy. I have like fewer than 50 episodes, and it's been downloaded like 300 and something thousand times or something like that.
Oh my word. So that really hits a chord.
It's crazy.
Strikes a chord with people.
Yeah. And then I have a free podcast about how to build a ghostwriting business called the Get Paid to Write podcast, where I just answer questions. I run a Facebook group for ghostwriters, and every week that we celebrate wins from the community. So there'll be 4 or 5 people who say, hey, I got this client, or I tried this and that happened. And then I'll spend half the episode reflecting on, hey, listen, Colleen just posted that she did this. Congratulations, Colleen. For everyone else, here's why that worked. And I will, talk through that type of stuff. So I do have a few podcasts. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about making that transition as your ghostwriting started taking off, how you made the transition from being the one doing the ghostwriting, because you would think everyone wants Nick. How are they going to handle someone else coming in and doing their work? So how did you make that transition?
Well, that was really, really hard. It was mostly hard in my head. It was harder in my head than it was outside. And frankly, it's a testimony to a lot of the stuff that you do with people. I am a member of a mastermind group. I surround myself with good coaching. Basically, I'm in a mastermind group with a bunch of coaches. So I get lots of great coaching from them. Right?
Thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, and the coaches in that group were really kind of like my ideal prospect, my avatar, so to speak, in the business world. And I started talking with them. Listen, I have way too much work to do, which is the opposite of most ghostwriters. And I really appreciate, and I'm a words of affirmation guy. So I receive really well your kind words about me. I am on the Enneagram, a helper. I just love helping people. In fact, my podcast that you mentioned with my kids, a personal growth podcast for kids, right? So we just talk about things in real life and reflect on what that means. And basically it's my way of brainwashing my children into looking at things in a positive light. So it's been super fun. It's been featured on Parents Magazine, a whole bunch of places. It's been really cool. So one of the things that comes from that is the idea of how to look at money. And I have my bag, I brought it home, and in the front pocket, I had just gone to the gym. So in the front pocket, I had my wallet fell out and some cash fell out. This is just like 3 nights ago. And my daughter picked up the cash and she started counting it. And I don't carry a lot of cash on me, but I had maybe $100 in cash or something like that on me at the time. And she started counting it and she's like, wow, $100. I want $100. And I asked her a question and I was begging internally for her to answer it, how I had brainwashed her to answer and to see if the lesson landed. And I'm really, really happy that it did. I said, how do you think I got that money? And she said, you must have helped a lot of people.
Oh.
Because another thing I stole from Zig Ziglar, I think it's Zig Ziglar, who said that money is really just a certificate of appreciation.
Yeah.
It's a thank you note from people. So whenever my kids say I see money, I say, yeah, you help enough people, you don't have to worry about how much money you're going to make. And she's like, you must have helped a lot of people. I said, I have. And then we just moved on with the day. So I do take that perspective and one of the big pieces of value that I tell our clients at the ghostwriting agency is that one of the benefits they get from working is we introduce you to our other clients to network together. I've had clients do speaking engagements together, being featured in each other's books, all sorts of different things. It makes the books better. It helps you build your momentum and whatnot.
I just thought of the best example of that our profit designers will be familiar with. So Jeff Mcmanus, one of the most popular episodes on the Profit by Design podcast was when I interviewed Jeff on his book, From Growing Weeders into Leaders. And we have a lot of landscapers in the landscape industry that follow the Profit by Design podcast. They eat his episode up. He's been featured in the How to Hire the Best, the Contractors edition. And I believe he's also referenced in the Entrepreneurs edition. So, and that was an introduction from you. You, as I was writing the Contractors edition, you said, hey, you need to know Jeff. And as a matter of fact, yes.
Oh, yeah, Jeff Mcmanus. That's great.
This water bottle that I drink from all the time, Jeff sent it to me after he was on the podcast.
He's such a great guy.
Yeah, he is. But that really speaks to you. You help, you connect people. And when you're writing a book and with your authors, you're always looking for who do they need to know? Where's a good collaboration here where they can support each other and set each other up for success?
Yeah. And I had been doing all that myself. So when I thought of, all right, there were two things. There were the clients who already had engaged me, and then there were clients who hadn't yet engaged me. So I talked with these folks and I said, listen, if you had hired me and I wanted to get help writing, would that be, how would you take that? And they said, well, it depends. I mean, if I hired you, I probably would want you to write it. But if you were still going through everything, I really only care about the end result, first of all. And second of all, I'm pretty sure if they've gotten to know you, they trust you and that you have their best interests in mind, and you'll get their work done faster and probably better if you don't have to do the first draft and the second draft or whatever. You get some help doing it. So they convinced me in a way that they helped me see that it's actually a value add to the clients. So I transitioned. There are some projects where I still am involved in all of the strategy and all of the, hey, let's connect Sabrina with Jeff, or let's do this, or whatever types of conversations. But there are some projects where I don't touch any of the words anymore, which is great. And I presented it as a value add. You're getting two people to see the content, to catch the typos, to see whether it actually makes sense outside of our heads. Because a lot of times we write something and we know what it means, but if someone's reading it, they say, wait, what does that sentence mean? So I presented it as a value add. Hey, I'm going to bring in a team member to help me out. The project's going to get done faster. We're going to have an additional set of eyes on it, and I'm still going to be involved, especially on the existing projects. On the new projects, I presented it as how we work. This is how we work. I'm the strategy guy, and I have a team of people who I've trained. They're great writers, and not to diminish that, but they do the seventh most important part of this project, which is the writing. We help the strategy, we help the networking, and if you use our strategy, you'll get connected with people who can benefit you in so many different ways, open up doors or whatever. You and I talked a little bit about how some of our clients have been able to generate significant revenue from their book or because of their book, even before it's written.
So when Nick says significant revenue, one of the clients that he was sharing with me about, this is a client whose book is not yet published, but who got 2 clients prior to the book being published that total $120,000 in revenue. So that's the value of this kind of strategy that's going into the book. And so I just want to point a few things out here. If you're the one doing the writing, and you're in the weeds and you're sitting at the computer and you're editing, you can't do that higher level strategic thinking that leads to that kind of value for your author who's writing that book. And so when you started making that transition and you pointed out the value of that, you really owned your strengths and conveyed the value of those strengths. And so for those of you who are listening to this and you're thinking, I can't get out of the weeds of my business, I want to invite you into that powerful question of what could you be doing? What value could you be providing when you're not in the weeds? What's being missed for your top clients? The other thing that I'll share is being on the receiving end of being told, I'm not going to be the one writing the book this time with you, Sabrina. It's going to be Sarah. Here's Sarah. Meet Sarah. And you brought her in at the beginning of the project. And my husband and I have a little joke because when we go places and someone says, I just raised my fees, he'll say, oh, did Sabrina coach you? Because
that kind of happens. And so I have to be prepared to take my own medicine. And so there was a little bit of moment, a pause in there for me when you did that. And I put, Nick's not going to write the book. What happened? What if I don't like Sarah? But she put me right at ease. Like you had hired an A player, and I sensed it from her right away. And it was just the briefest little moment of, oh my gosh. And then I was totally at ease with it. The project took off. She took charge of things. We laid out a timeline. This is how it's going to happen. And she shows up. Talk about consistency. Like, we're consistent. We stay on top of things, and it's added tons of value. And you and I have had conversations when the Entrepreneurs edition of How to Hire the Best came out. We had some hiccups. You got into a call with Sarah and I, and you gave me some great ideas for my team for marketing and promoting the book. And we were off and running again. And so in that, for you, I think it was like a 30-minute conversation. It was huge value for me. So this speaks to when we, the entrepreneurs, own our value and recognize what our strengths are and set things up so we can really work in that way, the value that gets delivered to our clients.
Yeah. And I appreciate that too, because I challenged myself. In fact, it depends on, you could say this with different emphasis to get different results from the sentence, but my clients get more value when I don't write their books. And it's not because I'm not a great writer. I'm very confident in my writing, but because I challenged myself to make my clients successful. My job is to make sure my clients are successful, independent of the book. And that's where I make those connections. I say, okay, well, what are your strategies? And like our conversation on marketing, we could have done 10 different directions in it. I have one client whose book recently just got on the Wall Street Journal bestsellers list. Why? Because that was relevant to their business. So that's a different approach. It's not needed, especially if you write the book this way. But some people just say, oh, it's in the business world. It's the big business world. If they see Wall Street Journal, they'll be excited. Okay, so this is the marketing strategy that works for that. Let's see if we can go international with your book. This is how you do that. So international, you got the best-selling thing, and that's huge. And then what do you do with it? So for me, it's let's make those connections. Let's build those relationships. And then I had one client who said, listen, I sell advertising services and I want to attract clients to my ad agency. So what kind of book should I write? And he came to me with an idea for a book, and he said, here's my book. And it was about leadership, how to lead a team of millennials. And I said, well, that's a great book. I said, what are your goals? He goes, well, ultimately, my goals are to build up my ad agency, and a big ad agency for companies like Toyota and whatever. So I said, great, I love it. This book about leading millennials can help, and here's how we do it. And we need to feature people in your book who are potential ad clients for your agency. So you build a relationship with them by saying, hey, can I feature you in my book? I see that your company leads, has this real cool initiative. Can I interview you for my book? The same people, if he had called and said, hey, I run this ad agency, I'd love to talk to you about promoting your company, they'd say, we have an ad agency, and hang out or whatever. He got immediate yeses. And with him, even before his book came out, he had some progress with conversations, big companies, so it took a little longer. But within the first year of his book coming out, he had something like $200,000 in consulting revenue for leadership training. And then since then has had 2 A-list companies you would recognize hire his ad agency for 6+ figure projects since then. So that allowed me to just focus in on that. And the words get done super, super well. But I know my clients don't come to me for a Word document that can win them a poetry award at the local small business association. I know they want a book for a reason, and that reason is to grow their business, transition their business, make an impact on the next generation or whatever. So I help them do that. We just had one client who's writing a book on allyship in the DEI world, diversity, equity, and inclusion world, and how to be an ally for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workforce. And she wrote most of her book. Sarah helped her too. She wrote the vast majority of it, and we helped polish it up and position her to get it published. And even before the book was written, she had the president of a major university here in the Northeast talk with her about getting everyone in the university to read it, and had the CEO of Netflix read her manuscript, and I don't know what's happening with them, but they're super focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they love the book, and she's engaging with them. She knew neither of those people before the book process. So now you tell me, like, Nick, will you write my book? I'll say, I'll do it, but you're going to be less successful because that's going to take me away from being able to help in other ways. So it's changed the way I looked at my business and the value proposition for my business.
Absolutely. And, I want to talk about the other side of this too, as an author, because one of the things that surprised me when I issued the 4-week vacation challenge to our clients at the Breakthroughs retreat several years ago, the first time I issued that challenge, we had people come forward and take the pledge. And we have one who was an aspiring author, and she used her time away from her business, her vacation tests, to write her book. And we have others in our Breakthroughs community that are one right now who's writing a book that's going to be out in just a couple of months. And then there's another behind that one. And so one of the things that kind of has surprised me is, as entrepreneurs, when we step away from our business and we start thinking about what would I like to do, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who want to write a book, who want to share, and may feel like writing is not their strength. It's not their thing. So where do you get started? And for me, one of the best things, I've written multiple books. My very first book, Success from the Inside Out, I wrote all by myself. It's a self-published book. You can't get it anywhere. You can get it, but I'm not going to tell you where to get it because I don't want to have to update it and make sure it's all current. But I wrote that one by myself and it was fine. But I like writing, but I do not like having to track down research. I don't like having to make sure the citations are accurate. I like to get the outline, and I like to tell the story part of our clients, but I get to work from my strengths on the part of the book that I enjoy most. And Sarah does the other pieces. And so this is another iteration of, if you have it in you, if you're listening to this and you think you want to write a book, but maybe you don't know how to do the whole process, or it's overwhelming or intimidating, having a ghostwriter is that person that can take the pieces off of you that are not your strength, that drain your energy, that you procrastinate around. And once I realized that, I think that's a big thing. Probably if you talked about what authors do that drive you crazy, is probably procrastinate. Once I realized that, all of my procrastination is off the table because I have somebody who can do the parts that I don't like. So let's talk a little bit about, what would you recommend for somebody who is listening to this, who wants to get started writing a book, and your course that you have coming up? What's involved there?
Yeah, so I'm launching the course called Booked, and it's designed for thought leaders. And it walks through the exact process that we put our ghostwriting clients through to help them achieve that success and to help them use the book writing process as a way to generate revenue opportunities. And the idea of the title Booked is, we help you write a book that gets you booked. And so it walks through step by step how to do that. It gives you the forms, the planning forms that we use with our clients. And it encourages you to avoid those book in a weekend projects, because the vast majority of books will sell 200 copies, 300 copies. That's okay. I have a client who sold 200 or 300 copies and was generating $72,000 a year in annual recurring revenue at that point. And that's because he used this process and he was generating clients while he was writing, where he was getting the ideas in there. And now he gives away the book as fast as he can. He doesn't care about selling the book. And what a relief it is for people in your network, in your world, to not be constantly sold your book, because you don't need to sell books to be successful. So we teach you how to make any commercial success inconsequential. If you want to do it, great. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the fact that you were able to, I don't know how many countries your book was #1 in when you launched it.
Multiple.
Yeah, it was a lot.
It's crazy.
Right? And you know that your book's going to be helping people in a bunch of different countries. But the real impact that on your business is from those deeper connections. And you're able to use the success that you have to open doors. So we teach you how to do that. So we walk you through the process.
Just a testimonial to what you're sharing. Just last night, I was analyzing our assessment data. We have the Better Business, Better Life assessment that our clients take. And one of the questions we ask there is, how did you hear about us? And I was going through looking at how many people have come into our world because of my book. Someone recommended it to them. Someone told them to read that book. I'm teaching the How to Hire the Best course, and I have people in there who read the rural edition of my book that we published, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And they're in the course and they're like, I've been following this and practicing it, and now I want to learn it from you, and I want your hand holding. And so the book is just a way for people. It's like an introduction. It's like, here's a simple way to get to know me and what I'm about. And it's also a way to prove value that, it's not selling. It's just saying, here's what I know and here's how I can help you.
Yeah. And if you help people, I encourage people to put everything in the book. In fact, that book that was generating $72,000 a year in recurring revenue for this guy, at the end, I said, listen, before we publish this book, because his book's a little technical, I said, we need to put a plan, a 30-day plan at the end to help people start getting results. And he said, but that 30-day plan is all I do in business. And I encouraged him. I said, yeah, totally fine. His offer is like $350 per event. His competitors are $50 or $100, but they don't do it as well as him. There are some high-end stuff. I said others now, but this is like a few years ago. And I said, listen, there are 2 types of people who read books: the do-it-yourselfers and the I'm never going to do it myselfers. So the do-it-yourselfers are going to read your book, and if you put that 30-day plan at the end, they are going to follow it, and they're going to be successful, and that's going to be awesome because they're going to be out in the world and people can say, hey, how did you do it? And that person who asked them, how'd you do it, is going to be one of 2 types of people: the do-it-yourselfer or the never going to do it yourselfer. And if they're the never going to do it yourselfer, all they do is when that person says, oh, I read this book, check it out, they're going to look at the book and say, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. And then they're going to hire you. So just be as helpful as you can in your book. And we teach you how to do that in a way that works and that generates a whole bunch of people. And those are your salespeople. I have, for ghostwriting, I haven't written a book for my ghostwriting business. At some point I might, although I do feel obliged to hire a ghostwriter to do it because, practice what you preach, like you say with the pricing. So I will likely have Sarah write my book.
Take your own medicine.
Yeah, exactly. So, but your success stories become your salespeople that way. So the book walks you through the exact process. So everything but the writing is in there. There's literally no reason to hire me if you go through that course and follow it step by step.
So is it booked.com?
No, because that would have been way too expensive.
Save the money, be profitable.
Yeah, so maybe someday I will do it, but it's frombooktobooked.com.
From book to booked.com. And we will link to this in the show notes because we don't want you to miss it.
Yeah.
So, and just another fun little thing that I want to brag on Sarah. She and I have been doing these editing passes on the 4-week vacation, and I picked it up the other day to start the editing pass. And I had not been in chapter 1 for a long time. And I read chapter 1 and I had this experience. I've never had this happen when it's my own book. I had this experience of, I don't want to put this book down. I need to know what's going to happen here. And so that to me feels like we're nailing it. The way we work together is we're hitting what is going to resonate with people. If it resonates with me, and I think it's going to resonate with others. And so it's a very powerful experience to have a ghostwriter because she's helping pull out all the good things from me.
That's been one of the best parts too about if I had never invited other people into my company, I help other writers, not just teaching them how to ghostwrite through Ghostwriter School, but I help other writers. Like I hired Sarah. She's my head of content. Now I get to support her and she gets to go, full-time writing income. I get to help people turn their passion into their profession. And it's just really, if I never did that, if I still kept everything to myself, my clients would be worse served. And there'd be, at this point, 8 writers who were struggling more than they are because they're able to get work through me.
You just spoke right to my vision for Tap the Potential and everything that we teach in the Tap the Potential solution, which is in the 4-week vacation book, because I'm with you. We're putting it all in there. No secrets. The greatest message that I want to get out there to entrepreneurs is that when you let go, you get to grow and you grow the people around you. You are a real opportunity generator at that point. And when you're bringing these A players into your business, like Sarah's an A player, you're creating huge opportunities for them that did not exist previously. And it's one of the greatest gifts you can do in the world. So this has been a very inspiring conversation, Nick. You just want to go write my book and get it out there.
Let's do it.
I appreciate you sharing so openly about your journey and what you've learned. And Profit Designers, I hope to hear from you in the Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back Facebook group. what you are taking away from Nick's story and the aha moments and insights. There's been a lot of them. So thank you, Nick.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been truly an honor, not just to help support you, but to share with your audience and hopefully push people forward. And I am in the Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back Facebook group.
Awesome. Yes. So we'll have a discussion afterwards when this podcast goes out and people listen, we can be part of the conversation. And I think that's the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Any follow-up, anything, happy to answer questions.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back Facebook community at tapthepotential.com/group. Share your aha moments from today's episode, ask me questions, and join in on the fun with your fellow entrepreneurs on the journey to designing sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. And finally, share today's episode with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.